Welcome to Wise Voices, where the words of great philosophers and freedom fighters still echo today. If you believe wisdom should guide our modern world, then don't just listen, be part of this journey. You think you know who to avoid. The liars, the cheaters, the ones who hurt you openly. But what if I told you that the most dangerous people in your life are not the obvious villains? They are sitting at your dinner table, working in the office next to you, maybe even sleeping beside you at night, and you have no idea what they are doing to your mind. Welcome to Wise Voices, where we explore the hidden truths about human nature that most people never dare to face. Carl Jung, one of the greatest minds in psychology, spent decades studying the human psyche, and what he discovered was terrifying. He found that the people who damage us most are not always aware of what they are doing. They are not evil masterminds. They are unconscious, and that makes them far more dangerous. Because you cannot defend yourself against something you cannot see. You cannot protect your mind from someone who does not even know they are attacking it. Think about the last time you felt completely drained after spending time with someone, or when you doubted yourself after a simple conversation, or when you felt guilty for no logical reason. These are not accidents. These are signs. Signs that you are dealing with someone whose unconscious mind is feeding on yours. And if you do not learn to recognize these people, they will consume you piece by piece until there is nothing left. Jung warned us. He said that what we do not make conscious controls us from the shadows. This is true for you, and it is true for everyone around you. The difference is that some people never look inward. They never face their demons. So those demons find a new home. In you, in your thoughts, in your energy, in your peace of mind. Today, we are going to expose 6 types of people that Jung identified as psychologically dangerous. Not because they want to hurt you, but because they cannot help it. Their unconscious drives them. And if you stay close to them without awareness, you will become a prisoner of their inner chaos. But here is what most people miss. These types are not just out there. They might also be inside you. And that is the part that will truly change your life. When you can see these patterns in yourself, you become free. When you can see them in others, you become protected. Are you ready? Then let us begin. But I warn you, after this, you will never look at people the same way again. You will start seeing the invisible threads that connect minds, the unconscious games that destroy relationships, and the silent ways people steal your mental peace without saying a word. Let us start with the first type, the one Jung feared most because this person can destroy you while smiling. There is someone in your life right now who makes everything about them. Every conversation somehow circles back to their problems, their pain, their struggles. At first, you think you are helping. You listen. You give advice. You offer support. But no matter what you do, nothing changes. They come back the next day with the same complaints, the same stories, the same crisis. And slowly, without realizing it, you stop living your own life. You become an emotional support system for someone who refuses to support themselves. This is what Jung called the unconscious manipulator. Someone who uses you as a dumping ground for everything they refuse to process inside themselves. They do not do this on purpose. That is what makes it so dangerous. They genuinely believe they need you. They genuinely feel like victims. But what they are really doing is projecting their internal chaos onto you and making it your responsibility to fix. Jung wrote extensively about projection. He said it is one of the most powerful mechanisms of the unconscious mind. When someone cannot face their own fear, anger, or shame, they see it in you instead. They accuse you of being angry when they are the ones full of rage. They call you selfish when they are the ones taking everything. They make you feel guilty when you have done nothing wrong. And the worst part? You start believing them. You start thinking, maybe I am the problem. Maybe I am not doing enough. Maybe I am the one who needs to change. But here is the truth. You are not responsible for another person's unconscious. You are not a therapist. You are not a savior. And when you try to be, you lose yourself in the process. The unconscious manipulator will drain your time, your energy, your mental clarity, and they will do it all while playing the victim. They will cry. They will guilt trip you. They will make you feel like abandoning them is the cruelest thing you could ever do. But staying is crueler. To yourself, Jung said that projection creates a kind of psychic blindness. The manipulator cannot see you as a real person. They see you as a character in their internal drama. You are the hero who is supposed to save them, or the villain who is supposed to validate their suffering. Either way, you are not you. You are a symbol, a mirror, a tool. And the moment you stop playing the role, they turn on you. Suddenly, you are the bad guy. You are cold. You are heartless. You do not understand. This is how the unconscious manipulator keeps you hooked. They make you feel special for understanding them. Then they make you feel terrible for trying to leave. It is a cycle, and it repeats endlessly until you have the courage to break it. But breaking it requires something most people are not willing to do. It requires you to stop trying to fix someone who does not want to be fixed. It requires you to accept that some people are so lost in their own unconscious that no amount of love, support, or patience will bring them out. They have to do that work themselves. And until they do, they will continue using everyone around them as emotional crutches. You can spot an unconscious manipulator by paying attention to patterns. Do they ever take responsibility? Do they ever admit they were wrong? Do they ever actually change after all your advice? Or do they just keep repeating the same destructive behaviors while expecting you to clean up the mess? If the answer is no, you are dealing with someone whose unconscious is in control. And that unconscious does not care about you. It only cares about survival, even if that survival costs you your peace. Living with this type of person is exhausting. You wake up tired. You go to bed anxious. You feel like you are walking on eggshells, trying not to trigger another emotional explosion. And here is the trap. Because they seem so fragile, you feel like you cannot leave. You feel like you are the only one who understands them, the only one who can help. But that is the illusion. You are not helping. You are enabling. And the longer you stay, the more you lose touch with your own feelings, your own needs, your own reality. Jung believed that the greatest danger of projection is that it makes you doubt yourself. When someone constantly projects their issues onto you, you start to internalize their narrative. You start seeing yourself through their distorted lens. And that is when you become truly lost. Because now you are not just dealing with their unconscious. You are letting it merge with yours. You are letting their shadow infect your mind. The only way out is awareness. You must recognize the pattern. You must name it. You must see that what is happening is not about you. It is about them. And once you see it clearly, you must make a choice. Do you stay and continue sacrificing yourself? Or do you walk away and reclaim your mental freedom? There is no middle ground. The unconscious manipulator will not change because you ask nicely. They will only change when they are forced to face themselves. And that only happens when people stop rescuing them. But the unconscious manipulator is just the beginning. Because there is another type of person who is even more dangerous. Someone who does not just project their chaos onto you. They live behind a mask, so convincing that even they believe it is real. And when you get close to them, you realize there is no one actually home. Just a hollow performance, a script, a a lie that has been repeated so many times it has become their identity. In the next batch, we will dive into this terrifying reality, the person who has forgotten who they truly are, and how being around them can make you forget who you are, too. There are people who seem perfect. They say the right things. They dress the right way. They have the right job, the right friends, the right smile. But when you spend time with them, something feels off. You cannot put your finger on it. There is no warmth, no depth, no real connection. It is like talking to a well-programmed robot. Everything is polite. Everything is appropriate. But nothing is real. This is what Jung called the persona. And the person who lives entirely through this mask is one of the most psychologically dangerous types you will ever encounter. Not because they will attack you, but because they will slowly teach you to betray yourself. Jung explained that the persona is the social mask we all wear. It is necessary. It helps us function in society. You act differently at work than you do at home. You speak differently to your boss than you do to your best friend. This is normal. This is healthy. The problem begins when someone forgets they are wearing a mask, when the mask becomes their entire identity, when they believe they actually are the role they are playing. The persona-identified person has spent so long pretending that they have lost contact with their authentic self. They do not know what they truly feel. They do not know what they truly want. They only know what they are supposed to feel and want. And this creates a life that looks successful on the outside, but feels empty on the inside. The good job that brings no joy. The perfect relationship that has no intimacy. The busy schedule that leads nowhere meaningful. But here is where it becomes dangerous for you. When you are close to someone like this, they expect you to wear a mask too. They cannot handle your authenticity because it reminds them of everything they have buried. When you express real emotion, they become uncomfortable. When you show vulnerability, they withdraw. When you speak an uncomfortable truth, they change the subject or get defensive. They need you to play along with the performance, and if you refuse, they see you as the problem. Living with a persona-identified person means constantly editing yourself. You learn to hide your sadness because they cannot handle it. You learn to suppress your anger because it disrupts the peace. You learn to fake enthusiasm because anything less feels like a betrayal of the image. And slowly, without even noticing, you start losing touch with your own authentic self. You become a supporting actor in someone else's carefully constructed play. Jung warned that this identification with the persona is a betrayal of the soul. He said that when you live only through your social mask, your real self gets pushed into the unconscious. And what gets pushed into the unconscious does not disappear. It festers. It grows dark. It becomes shadow. The persona-identified person is not just fake. They are sitting on top of a psychological time bomb. All those repressed feelings, all those denied desires, all those hidden truths are building pressure. And eventually, something has to give. You see this when the perfect person suddenly has a breakdown. The successful businessman who disappears one day. The devoted mother who suddenly cannot get out of bed. The always happy friend who attempts suicide, and everyone says they never saw it coming. They did not see it coming because the person was so good at pretending, even to themselves, especially to themselves. But before the explosion happens, everyone around them pays a price. Because maintaining that perfect image requires constant control, not just of themselves, but of their environment, of you. They need you to behave in ways that support their narrative. They need you to not make waves. They need you to keep smiling, even when you are dying inside. And if you start breaking character, if you start showing cracks, they panic because your authenticity threatens their entire psychological structure. This is why being around persona-identified people feels so suffocating. There is no room for realness. Every interaction is a performance. Every conversation has an agenda. Nothing is spontaneous. Nothing is truly intimate. You are always playing a role. And when you are always playing a role, you forget who you are when no one is watching. Jung believed that the path to psychological health requires integrating the persona, not identifying with it. You need to know when to wear the mask and when to take it off. You need to be able to function in society while still maintaining contact with your authentic self. The persona-identified person has lost this balance completely. They cannot take off the mask because they believe there is nothing underneath it, and this belief is so terrifying that they will do anything to avoid facing it, including sacrificing every genuine relationship in their life. The question you must ask yourself is this: are you willing to sacrifice your authenticity to maintain someone else's illusion? Are you willing to shrink yourself to fit into their perfect picture? Because that is what will be required, and the cost is higher than you think. It is not just about pretending in front of them. It is about losing the ability to be real even when you are alone. The mask starts to stick, and one day you wake up and realize you have become just like them. Hollow, polished, empty. But there is an even darker side to this psychological coin. Because while the persona-identified person hides behind a mask of perfection, there is another type who hides something far more dangerous. They have pushed so much of themselves into the darkness that they no longer recognize their own shadow. And when shadow is unacknowledged, it does not stay quiet. It leaks out. It poisons. It destroys. And the person has no idea they are doing it. The shadow is everything you refuse to accept about yourself. Jung said it is the part of your personality that you find unacceptable, so you repress it into the unconscious. But here is what most people do not understand. The shadow is not just bad things. It also contains power, creativity, passion, and vitality. When you repress your shadow, you do not just hide your darkness. You also lose access to your aliveness. The person with the repressed shadow appears to be in control. They are calm. They are rational. They are disciplined. They never lose their temper. They never say anything inappropriate. They are the responsible one, the mature one, the one everyone relies on. But underneath this controlled surface, there is a raging storm. And that storm is looking for a target. This is the person who never admits to being angry, but punishes you with silence. Who never admits to being jealous, but sabotages your success. Who never admits to having dark thoughts, but judges everyone else viciously. They have convinced themselves they are good, moral, and right. And anyone who challenges this self-image becomes the enemy. Not consciously, but unconsciously. And unconscious enemies are the most dangerous kind because they strike in ways you cannot predict or defend against. Jung said that the brighter the persona, the darker the shadow. The more someone insists they are perfect, the more darkness they are hiding. And when you live close to someone with a heavily repressed shadow, you become the screen onto which they project all their denied darkness. They see in you what they cannot see in themselves. They accuse you of the very things they are guilty of. They hate in you what they hate in themselves. And they do it with complete conviction because they genuinely believe the problem is you. This type of person is exhausting to be around because you are constantly being blamed for things that make no sense. You make a simple comment and they explode. You achieve something good and they minimize it. You express a need and they make you feel selfish. Nothing you do is right because you are not dealing with the real person. You are dealing with their shadow. And the shadow is irrational, volatile, and hungry. The repressed shadow does not just affect the person who carries it. It contaminates everyone nearby. You start to feel anxious around them even when nothing bad is happening. You start to second-guess yourself constantly. You start to feel like you are walking through a minefield where any step could trigger an explosion. And the most confusing part is that this person will deny everything. They will tell you that you are overreacting, that you are too sensitive, that you are imagining things. Because to admit that they have a shadow would shatter their carefully constructed self-image. Living with someone like this means living in a constant state of psychological warfare. You are fighting an invisible enemy. You are being attacked by someone who swears they are not attacking you. You are drowning while everyone around you insists the water is not even deep. And eventually, you start to believe maybe you are the problem. Maybe you are too much. Maybe you are not enough. Maybe you are crazy. But you are not crazy. You are just dealing with someone whose unconscious has taken control. And until they face their shadow, until they admit that they too have darkness, nothing will change. They will continue projecting. They will continue blaming. They will continue making you responsible for their internal hell. The only way to protect yourself is to stop accepting their projections. Stop taking responsibility for their feelings. Stop trying to prove you are good enough, because it is not about you. It has never been about you. It is about what they cannot face in themselves, and that is not your job to fix. But there is something even more insidious than someone who projects their shadow. There is a type of person who uses morality as a weapon. They do not just hide their darkness. They turn it into righteousness. They make you feel guilty for being human. They make you feel sinful for having desires. They make you feel broken for not meeting their impossible standards. And they do all of this while believing they are helping you, saving you, guiding you toward the light. Jung called this type the moral sadist, the person who uses ethics, rules, and righteousness to control and dominate others. They are not interested in truth. They are interested in power. But the power is disguised as virtue. So you cannot fight back without looking like the bad person. You cannot defend yourself without appearing immoral. It is a perfect trap. This person always knows what is right, always knows what you should do, always has an opinion about how you are living wrong. They position themselves as the moral authority, the one who sees clearly while everyone else is blind. And if you dare to question them, you are not just wrong, you are corrupt, you are lost, you are dangerous. Jung understood that this type of person is driven by profound insecurity. They need to feel superior. They need to feel righteous. Because deep down, they are terrified of their own impulses. So they project all their forbidden desires onto others and then punish those others for having them. The person who is obsessed with other people's sexuality is often repressing their own. The person who constantly preaches about greed is often hiding their own hunger for power. The person who judges everyone else's choices is often running from their own failures. But here is what makes this type so dangerous. They do not see themselves as controlling. They see themselves as caring. They genuinely believe they are doing good. And this makes them immune to feedback. When you tell them they are being judgmental, they say they are just being honest. When you tell them they are being controlling, they say they are just trying to protect you. When you tell them they are hurting you, they say you are too sensitive to hear the truth. Living with a moral controller is like living in a prison where the warden insists it is paradise. You are constantly monitored, constantly corrected, constantly reminded of how you fall short. And the worst part is that you start to internalize their voice. You start to police yourself even when they are not around. You start to feel guilty for things that are completely natural. You start to believe that your humanity is something to be ashamed of. Jung warned that excessive moralism is one of the greatest obstacles to psychological growth. Because growth requires honesty. It requires looking at all parts of yourself, even the uncomfortable ones. But the moral controller creates an environment where honesty is dangerous, where vulnerability is weakness, where admitting struggle is admitting defeat. So everyone around them learns to hide, to pretend, to perform goodness while suffocating their true selves. This type thrives in families, religious communities, and rigid social structures. anywhere that values obedience over authenticity, anywhere that confuses conformity with virtue. And the damage they cause is deep, because they do not just control your behavior, they colonize your conscience. They become the voice in your head that tells you that you are never enough, that you are always failing, that you must constantly atone for the crime of being imperfect. But while the moral controller attacks you with judgment, there is another type that attacks you with need. They do not accuse you of being bad. They just require you to be everything. Their therapist, their parent, their savior, their purpose. And they will suck the life out of you drop by drop until you have nothing left to give. This is the emotional vampire. And Jung saw them as one of the most draining forces in human relationships. Not because they are evil, but because they have never learned to sustain themselves. They are psychologically incomplete, and they need you to be the missing piece. But no matter how much you give, it is never enough, because you cannot fill a hole that exists inside someone else. The emotional vampire comes in many forms. The friend who always has a crisis, the partner who needs constant reassurance, the family member who guilts you every time you try to have your own life. What they all have in common is an endless need for attention, validation, and energy, and they have learned, consciously or unconsciously, how to extract it from others. Jung spoke about psychological symbiosis, relationships where boundaries dissolve and people become entangled in each other's psyches. This can happen in parent-child relationships, where the parent never lets the child individuate. It can happen in romantic relationships where one person becomes completely dependent on the other for their sense of identity. It can happen in friendships where one person is always the giver and the other always the taker. The emotional vampire does not necessarily intend to drain you. They are often unaware of what they are doing. They just know that when they are around you, they feel better. They feel less anxious, less empty, less alone. So they keep coming back. They keep reaching out. They keep demanding more. And if you try to create distance, they escalate. They have a breakdown. They threaten to hurt themselves. They make you feel like you are abandoning them in their darkest hour. This is manipulation, but it is unconscious manipulation, which makes it harder to defend against, because the person genuinely believes they need you, and you genuinely want to help. But what starts as compassion turns into captivity. You stop having time for yourself. You stop pursuing your own goals. You stop feeling your own feelings because you are too busy managing theirs. And one day you wake up and realize you do not recognize your own life anymore. Jung said that true relationship requires two whole individuals, not two halves trying to complete each other. When you are dealing with an emotional vampire, you are not in a relationship. You are in a rescue operation, and rescue operations are not sustainable. Eventually, the rescuer collapses. Eventually, resentment builds. Eventually, you realize that no amount of love, support, or sacrifice will ever be enough, because the void inside them is not yours to fill. The only way to deal with an emotional vampire is to set boundaries. Firm, clear, non-negotiable boundaries. You can care about someone without being consumed by them. You can support someone without sacrificing yourself. But this requires you to tolerate their discomfort, their disappointment, their accusations that you are selfish or cruel, because they will use every emotional tool they have to pull you back in. And if you do not have the strength to withstand it, you will spend your entire life being drained. But here is the final and most important truth that Jung taught. All of these types exist on a spectrum, and all of them exist, to some degree, within you. You have manipulated. You have hidden behind a mask. You have projected your shadow. You have judged others harshly. You have drained someone's energy. The question is not whether you have done these things. The question is whether you are aware of it, whether you take responsibility, whether you do the work to integrate your unconscious. This is what separates the dangerous person from the conscious person. Not the absence of darkness, but the willingness to face it. The dangerous person runs from their shadow and makes everyone else pay the price. The conscious person turns toward their shadow and does the hard work of integration. They admit when they are wrong. They apologize when they hurt someone. They take feedback. They change. They grow. Jung spent his entire life teaching one central truth. What you do not make conscious will control you. And this applies to everyone. The manipulator who refuses to see their patterns, the performer who refuses to take off the mask, the judge who refuses to examine their own sins, the vampire who refuses to stand on their own. They are all controlled by forces they do not understand, and they make everyone around them suffer for it. But you do not have to be one of them. And you do not have to tolerate them in your life. Awareness is power. Once you see these patterns, you cannot unsee them. Once you name the dynamic, you can step out of it. Once you understand what is happening, you can protect yourself, not with cruelty, not with judgment, but with clear boundaries and self-respect. The people Jung warned us about are not monsters. They are unconscious, and unconsciousness is contagious. If you spend enough time around someone who refuses to look inward, you will stop looking inward too. If you spend enough time around someone who blames everyone else, you will start doubting yourself. If you spend enough time around someone who performs instead of feeling, you will forget how to be real. So choose carefully who you allow into your inner circle. Choose people who are doing the work, people who take responsibility, people who admit their flaws, people who can apologize, people who respect boundaries, people who see you as a whole person, not as a character in their unconscious drama. These are the people who will help you grow. Everyone else will just hold you back. And if you recognize yourself in any of these descriptions, do not despair. Awareness is the first step toward change. Jung believed in the possibility of transformation. He believed that anyone, no matter how lost, can find their way back to wholeness. But it requires brutal honesty. It requires facing the parts of yourself you have been running from. It requires admitting that maybe, just maybe, you have been the dangerous one in someone else's story. This is not easy work, but it is the most important work you will ever do. Because the alternative is to remain unconscious, to keep projecting, to keep manipulating, to keep draining, to keep hiding, and to watch every meaningful relationship in your life crumble under the weight of your unexamined psyche. You have a choice. You can keep running from your shadow, or you can turn around and face it. You can keep blaming others for your pain, or you can take responsibility for your healing. You can keep demanding that the world change to accommodate your unconscious needs, or you can do the work to become a conscious, integrated, whole human being. Jung gave us the map, but only you can take the journey. And that journey begins the moment you stop pointing fingers and start looking in the mirror. The moment you stop asking what is wrong with everyone else and start asking what is unresolved within you. The moment you realize that the most dangerous person in your life might be the one staring back at you in the reflection. So take that first step. Do the work. Face the shadow. Integrate the unconscious. And become the kind of person who does not need to be avoided. Become the kind of person others feel safe around. Become the kind of person who creates healing instead of harm. That is the ultimate wisdom Jung offers us. Not just how to protect ourselves from dangerous people, but how to stop being one. If this video opened your eyes, do me a favor. Hit that like button, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Wise Voices, because we are just getting started. There is so much more to explore about the human mind, about relationships, about the invisible forces that shape our lives. And I want you here for all of it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for having the courage to look deeper. And remember, the unconscious only controls you if you refuse to see it. Now that you see it, you are free. Use that freedom wisely.